So if I'm a little grumpy, that's why.
It's called being hangry.
Angry.
I just heard that. Actually. All right, guys, we are live with Hangout number, this may be number 3 or so. My name is Dr. Chris McKenzie, board certified sports and orthopedic physical therapist at CK Performance in my lovely apartment right now. So let's see who else is here.
I'm Chris Kurtz. I am co-owner and president at CK Performance.
Jim Davidson, co-owner at CK Performance, pitching coordinator and development.
All right, so let's get started today. We're going to talk about in-season stuff since it's the in-season now. So let's jump right into this. Some topics that we're going to touch on are in-season strength and conditioning, if it should be performed or not, and how often and why, and all that stuff. In-season arm care, how much is too much, and that's gonna kind of segue into like soft tissue pliability stuff. So I'm gonna let Chris Kurtz take it away. If you're ready and willing, Chris.
I am. A lot of what we see with in-season work with our guys, we'll usually spend 2 days a week doing strength and conditioning work. In the off season, we'll spend a lot more time in plyometrics and med ball throwing. In season, because the boys are on the field every day, usually 6 days a week, whether it's practice or games, they're getting all of that training effect as they go. So plyometrics, medicine balls are dialed down or completely removed from most of our players' programs. The one scenario that we'll run into where we'll stretch a guy to a third day is if he's a guy that's, behind the 8 ball in terms of development, and needs to put on some more strength and needs to put on some more weight in order to compete. Or if we have a guy that's not playing often, we can add that third day in and try to help him, take his game up. In terms of, well, I'm not going to get into shoulder work yet, but that's our basic layout of what we do in season. And during the off season, we'll spend 3-4 days, sometimes 5 or 6 depending on the guy. And what we'll do in season with our guys, like I said, we'll do 2 days a week, but we'll structure it a little bit differently as well for pitchers versus position players. So our normal setup with pitchers, it's a little kind of wherever they fall with their start or their appearance. Dealing with relievers is probably the toughest part because you have to really have a little bit of finesse on with their schedule and try to get into the mind of their coach and how they're going to use them. With a starter, just to make things simple, the day after he throws, we'll go with a heavy or a heavier leg day. We'll work on a little bit of his upper body. We'll work on his core, and then spend a lot of time in soft tissue and recovery efforts. Then the next day he'll have either a day off or a movement day where we'll just do some light plyometrics, a lot of sprint work, and then the third day would be a little bit heavier with the upper body, lighter on the lower body, core work, and then we'll see them again after their next start. With position players, they'll go total line. There? Yeah.
Actually, so with the pitchers, you say that you do pretty much like a heavy leg day the day after they throw.
Correct.
Now, if they're using their legs explosively when they throw,
right?
Why would you want to do another leg day immediately afterward?
I've seen success with people that are higher up, and I've seen success with our guys with it, where they feel good. Now, when I say a heavy leg day, it's we won't go more than like 10 to 15 sets of actual work in their strength and conditioning, whereas in the off season, a heavy leg day they may be doing 20 sets of work, of actual work. So the volume while I say it's a heavy leg day, maybe they have three circuits programmed in. Two of those circuits will involve a lower body movement. So we'll have a bilateral movement, and then in the next circuit we'll have a unilateral movement, and in the third we'll have the upper body.
Okay.
It'll be in and out.
The rep counts that you would use, say, off season, compared to the ones that you would use in season. Like, what kind of reps would you be using? What kind of like reps and sets and your rest breaks? How do they compare in season versus?
We won't go below 6 reps in season. Off season we'll go down into the we'll go 5 and below. And to be honest, we spend most of our time in 8 rep counts with 8 to 10 rep counts with 2 to 3 sets of each. Whereas in the off season we'll spend 4, 5, 6 sets, 7 sets on some days, and depending on the programming.
Okay. I'm trying to think here. As far as eight reps is not quite getting to muscular hypertrophy or so, but is there a reason why you choose those in-season reps compared to those out-of-season reps? Because in my mind, intuitively, I would think that I want to keep hammering lower extremity power, and not like with crazy amounts of volume, but I would just want to maintain their explosiveness the whole way through the season. So I would kind of want to train in the weight room the days that you're going to train. I would want to train with lower reps, like the 3 reps and the 5 reps, and save like the 8 to 10 reps for another time.
Okay. I guess my concern with that is how they recover.
Okay.
And how that recovery time, how are they going to bounce back if they're going 6 days a week?
Okay. So this might be for the general, like the position player, and not necessarily a pitcher. Correct? Because
pitchers, and depending on the program too, because we know some pitchers don't even do anything between their starts. They don't have a structure around them that allows them to do something day in and day out, and they're kind of on their own and on their own island. But they should be getting their work in every single day. So that's they have their long toss. They have some days they'll do flat ground work. They have their bullpen work to get in. And then, whatever, working around whatever running that their coaches have them do, which tends to be, I still can't believe we get stories of guys coming in doing distance running, but it still happens.
Hey, man, it moves the blood around. And,
yeah, that's true.
Everything, it gets the toxins out.
Yeah, lactic acid,
It gets it all out of there, because the body can't do it on its own. You need to help it. All this is actually, it's really intriguing to me, because, there's stuff that position players, are responsible for, and there's stuff that pitchers are responsible for. It almost seems like, some pitchers could throw their last strike and then just kind of drop to their knees and be like, all right, I'm not going to throw or anything until the next time I have to throw. Whereas, like, position players, they play one game, then they're out there. The next game. So it's all kind of interesting to me, and I wonder if there is, like, the best way to do something for in season for pitchers, and then the best way to do something for in season for the remainder of athletes. It'd be really cool to do a study on that, but it would be super hard as well.
Yeah, there are too many variables.
So many.
Like Chris had mentioned, it's so individual, and at levels that the majority of our players play at, there is so much misinformation and therefore variety in methodologies that there's no consistency at all. And in fact, at CK Performance this year, that was something that we decided to institute, and it's what we're calling an in-season player maintenance program. Now, right now, at this point in our evolution, it's primarily for pitchers. But going forward, of course, we'd like to be able to offer that to everyone. And what that entails is, again, like Chris has mentioned, trying to get on schedule with the individual. So this can't be a one-size-fits-all program. Just come on in, we bunch you all together, and we do the same thing the same way. And we have to get on each individual schedule and then be able to provide for them what we believe would be optimum maintenance of their health, of their performance capabilities. And then, of course, that is really dependent on their recovery rates, and that varies between individuals. Some kids eat better than others. They sleep better than others, and they recover faster. Other kids not so much. So on an individual basis, trying to take all of those variables into account, and then our objective in this is to help the player to manage his day-to-day workload while maintaining his development that he's acquired throughout the off-season. Because invariably there's always a diminishment in physical well-being as the season goes along, and we're trying to manage that slide. I don't see players finishing a season healthier than they were when they began. So our objective is to manage that slide through the season and really reduce the risk of injury while maintaining their ability to perform at their potential throughout the whole entire season.
Yeah, it's well noted in the literature that players get, specifically the baseball pitcher, gets weaker, gets tighter over the course of a season. So players, obviously you're using your body like an explosive tool every day, day in, day out, and you're just gonna decline. So over time. So the goal with training in season training is to stop this from occurring and maybe level it out a little bit more.
Right. I think the best way I've ever heard that described is it's a controlled fall.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So going back to my original question, if you don't mind me asking this again, why stick in the 8-rep range and why not go for like the 3-rep range? Like, you know me, like I'm a big proponent of trying to generate as much force from the legs as we can. So after a pitcher throws, why stay in the 8-rep range and not go for like the 3-rep range?
I think recovery.
Okay.
Yeah, recovery, and I just think that you're going to be working with heavier loads. Obviously, the recovery is going to be one thing, but being able to maintain or I don't like our guys working with high loads during the year. I want them to maintain their strength as best they can, but I don't want them to be at risk and take a risk where a guy's working at 90% or more in his workload.
Yeah, I think it would be a thing where if if you were to train in season, lower body, legs, big muscles, heavy loads, low reps, like we do in the off season, to Chris's point, what I see happening, and I am talking predominantly with pitchers here, would be, again, recovery, and then the work that they do during the week leading up to the next start, for starters, it's not token work. It's high-level work and a lot of skill work. So although they're in between starts and performance is the #1 priority while in season, we try to not only maintain what we develop through the off season, we try to increase skill level while in season. So if we're working with high lows and low reps, and then the recovery required, to get back from that, I think it would really inhibit the work that we're doing in skill development while in season, because pitchers have a lot to deal with. They've got velocity, they've got command, and then they have to keep their health in the midst of all of this. So we're always working on better command, better ball control, different types of pitches, adding a pitch into the arsenal. So there's a lot of high-level work that goes on in between starts. And I think high loads, low reps, to Chris's point, might really hinder or inhibit that midweek, interweek process that we're working toward.
And Doc, I want to hear the other side of the coin. I want to hear, what do you have to say about going into 3 reps and getting into those work sets?
Well, I'm just kind of even curious about that. Like, if we're really trying to, if we're concerned about how the player is recovering, why even lift legs at all? Like, why even lift legs the day after? Why not wait one day and then have a leg workout the day after? Like, have a workout 2 days afterward.
Right. Okay. So rather than going immediately after the day immediately after, then have the day after that be so you're saying day 2 of rest. Let's say that the player gets 5 days rest and then he's back up on the mound. Because most high school players, if you're a pitcher and you're you're one of the guys, most coaches are going to go with 2 guys and they're going to ride them for the 20 games. So let's just say the day after you pitch, you're not going to have a very heavy workload.
Okay.
You might go out, you might do a light long toss. The day after that should be a much heavier day in terms of throwing demand. So you might stretch it out that day and go out and long toss. And then the 3rd day should be your bullpen day. 4th day, flat ground. And then day 5, you're back up.
Back up on the mound.
Right. So I like coming in the day after with a lift because that's usually just the lightest day of the week, and then they have the rest of the week to recover. And again, when I say maybe heavy's not the right word to describe it, but how about more an emphasis on the lower half day 1, and then an emphasis on the upper half on day 2, or the second lift, so which would be the 3rd off day. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes. 3rd.
So it's not necessarily we're going in and we're pounding the legs on the first off day and then going in and pounding the upper body on the 3rd off day. We're never I don't want to say never, but the approach is I'm not going to push guys the same with their volume and their intensity as I would from September to February.
Okay. I apologize. I was just a little bit distracted there because I had to do something for my wife. But
No problem, no problem. Happy wife, happy life, man.
yeah, man, exactly. All right, so it's not much of an. I have to do a little bit more thinking about that.
Okay.
Well, let's transition this now. Let's go to in-season farm care and how much is too much, and what should players actually be doing in season. And obviously, there's a lot of areas that encompass this. There's a lot of facets of in-season arm care. Jim, why don't you start us off on like what do you think good season arm care, or what do you think good in-season arm care needs to have?
I believe it begins with a post-throwing recovery protocol, and I mean that alone. We could hold a national symposium, and deal with that issue, because it's so disregarded. It kind of borders on stupidity, and I only use that word because we're supposed to be, aware of what we're doing and the stresses that we're putting on our bodies, with what we're doing, and to just, implement recovery protocols after throwing it is just common sense. It's not higher learning, it's common sense. So to be able to go out and throw 80 to 100 pitches, in an afternoon or an evening, and then just put the glove in the bag and go have pancakes is absurd. And we find that if a little bit of attention is given to an arm immediately after throwing, it accelerates the recovery process, at a phenomenal rate. It reduces any soreness that might occur, following throwing, like the next day, and it will, in combination with more efficient, proper movement patterns when throwing, really reduce or eliminate the need for ice, and these what I call archaic methods of dealing, with post-throwing arms. I see 13, 14-year-old kids running around with ice packs at baseball tournaments as soon as they come off the mound. And that is supposed to be normal, or it's accepted as being normal. Like Johnny's arm always hurts. We just ice him down, he's fine. Well, if they understood what was going on there and learned a little bit and took some time, after throwing, Johnny wouldn't need ice and his arm wouldn't be sore. So I think post-throwing recovery protocols are in order. It's job one, and it's where it all begins.
I don't mean to put you on the spot here, but could you, I'm not even sure if you have a post-throwing protocol, but I'm sure it encompasses a lot more stuff than just throwing. What would make up your protocol? So we got throwing, and then we probably have other stuff like nutrition, and probably have in-season working out. So like what other things would make that up? What things make up your protocol?
Well, I'm talking very specifically to the arm, all of the anatomy of the arm, soft tissue and musculature, bone, bone realignment. The process of throwing, tends to pull everything forward. And what happens is the humeral head tends to separate, out of the, correct me if I'm wrong, glenohumeral socket.
Yeah. So what happens is at a younger age, when the bones haven't closed yet, you get that. So the action of throwing with that arm that moves into external rotation, right? Like it goes towards the back, right? Like this. Over time, in the adolescent athlete that their growth plates haven't fused yet, the stresses of the bone are used to getting twisted like that. And that's how their arm ends up looking like it has more external rotation from the bony standpoint. It's called humeral retroversion. So the bone actually twists. It really doesn't twist a whole lot as we get older. It twists pretty much before the closure of the growth plates. And then we get soft tissue extensibility on the front or anterior part of the shoulder because of that external rotation. So when we look at a thrower, when we look at a thrower, they have lots of external rotation on the arm that they throw with compared with the arm that they do not throw with. And that's likely due to retroversion of the humeral head and then the soft tissue extensibility that happens on the front part of the shoulder.
Okay, and because of the excessive nature of throwing, we're throwing out the front side, not out the back side. It tends to pull our anatomy in that direction. So what we're looking at in post-throwing recovery protocols is just to more or less realign the soft tissue, in the shoulder and even elbow complexes, along with the bone structure and the musculature. So if we have very specific movements that we do with the arm, with the shoulder and the elbow, it stimulates a reversion of all of that tissue to where it more normally belongs. So there you have the recovery from the trauma of the throwing out the front side. And what studies and every individual who actually engages in this will tell you is that following the throwing, there's a tremendous reduction in I would imagine swelling and inflammation, and therefore pain and soreness if these protocols are instituted.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see what kind of literature you've been, that you've read that has looked at that. So that seems pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, there's literature, and then there are the people who actually live it. And you can't introduce a post-throwing recovery protocol to a pitcher who doesn't like it. I've never had one walk away and go, that's ridiculous, it's just nothing for me. I was as sore yesterday as I was last week after I pitched and did nothing. I've never heard that. I don't know what, how Chris would respond to that, but
I'm with you.
Yeah, to a man, everyone loves post-throwing recovery protocols, and you Chris know better than any of us that ice is interventionist. The healing process doesn't require ice. I mean, ice is for damaged tissue. If we have inflammation from use or overuse, there are better ways to deal with that than to try to introduce ice, which kind of it reduces the body's natural ability to promote healing with blood flow.
Yeah, there's a general effect that happens at the shoulder. I should say the blood supply in the shoulder, specifically of the muscles at the rotator cuff as they wrap around the top part of the head of the humerus. And I'm sorry if that's too specific, but the blood supply there isn't very great. It's not very wide. And when our arm's just kind of hanging down at the side, there's like a squeezing off effect of the blood supply there. Okay, so there's not a whole lot of blood supply that kind of gets into the shoulder area, which is why when you have damaged structures in the shoulder, it takes a little bit longer for it to heal. It's just why, like, when we have our guys do external rotation rotation exercises with their arm at their side like this, we always want to have their arm propped up a little bit like that. One of the reasons is because the blood supply that's right here, when the arm is at the side, it gets squeezed off. So we have the arm out a little bit to open up the blood supply there. So and I imagine when you throw, there's a squeezing off of that every time that you throw, which may partially be the reason why the shoulder fatigues, why it gets weaker over the course of the season. And I particularly tell people only use ice if you're having, a pretty substantial amount of soreness at your shoulder after you throw. Because when you use that ice, and you're like most people, when you're letting that arm hang down at your side, you're already squeezing off the blood supply here, and then ice is going to restrict that blood flow there. So proper healing isn't going to take place. So I only tell people to use ice on their shoulder if they're having like a substantial amount of soreness.
Mm-hmm.
So for our viewers, our many viewers that we have,
thousands of them,
all three of us.
If you could say, what's a good way to, you want to gauge how much pain you're in. I hear you say it all the time to our guys, from 1 to 10, 10 being I need to go to the hospital and my arm needs to be cut off. What's your pain right now? What would you say the baseline would be for
Ice.
Okay, it's time to ice?
Yeah, I would say, each person's number is going to be a little bit different because everyone has a different tolerance.
Right.
So I would say if we're starting out with an athlete who knows how they feel after they throw, if they've kind of established a baseline for themselves, how they feel, if they feel anything above and beyond that kind of raises an eyebrow, like, a little bit more sore than usual. So I would say for the individual athlete, if you just feel a little bit more sore than usual, it might be a good idea to use ice.
Okay.
It's kind of it's very subjective though.
Yeah, like you said, every case is going to be different. But just to so guys don't go off the deep end that do end up watching this and say, oh my God, was that pain that I just felt? What did I just feel? That might have been a 1 right there, but I should ice anyway. Like, you know what I mean? So just so
right.
Guys.
Yeah. So I would just say that general rule is, if you're a healthy thrower and you know how you normally feel and it's okay, if in your heart, in your body, you feel that it's okay, if you're more sore than that usual, then use ice.
Right.
I would say that the best post-throwing recovery protocol is learning proper and efficient movement patterns while throwing. Because the more efficiently we move, obviously, the less damage we're going to cause while we're using our bodies. Because we create, efficient, better alignments between body components, and they function together as opposing each other. So we can pitch or throw a multitude of ways. We can move a multitude of ways. Efficiently, most efficiently is always better than less efficiently. So if we want to back up and say what's the best medicine for post-throwing recovery, I would say throwing more efficiently. Because then all of a sudden post-throwing isn't nearly the big deal that it is if you move inefficiently, because you're not creating the stresses that you normally would on your body as an inefficient thrower. And one of the biggest things in that, apart from training and strengthening body parts and developing energy in body parts, and then transferring energy from body parts through body parts into your arm, would be deceleration. And deceleration is, it's like the 800-pound gorilla in the room. You know, it's always there, and nobody ever sees it or talks about it. So we spend all of our time gearing an arm up to throw 100 miles an hour, and once the ball leaves the arm, or I'm sorry, leaves the hand, you have an arm doing 100, you know, and everybody's ready to go get lunch. But at that point, you know, severe damage occurs. You know, if we don't learn how to decelerate that you know, that rapidly moving arm. So at CK Performance, we take deceleration real seriously. We spend a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of energy working on deceleration patterns, deceleration exercises, and trying to communicate to all of our players, pitchers and position players likewise, how absolutely critical deceleration is.
So what I'm going to do here, and you guys tell me if you can hear me, I'm just going to run through the difference of the follow-throughs, okay? So what a lot of guys do versus what deceleration should properly look like. And Jimmy, if you can chime in here, just kind of take me through it as if you're coaching me. Tell me if you guys can still hear me. So as I come through, what a lot of guys do is they get out here and what's called slapping in the follow-through phase. And I'm just going to bring this down a little bit more. So they get down in here and they get outside this leg and their arm stretches across. Proper deceleration as they come through wants to be through the ball, hand inside, and we're not having forearm fly out, and then we want to be decelerating with a soft elbow and rotating and pronating that thumb towards the front shoe or the shoelaces or the front ankle, whatever cue you want to use.
I like it.
Yeah, perfect. I would also add, you mentioned forearm flyout. That's huge.
Right. So this versus this, as you come through the acceleration phase, this would be forearm flyout.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And what happens in forearm flyout is that the forearm of the throwing arm it's trying to be held in by the bicep, you know, but because the hand is outside the elbow, it puts enormous extra stress on the bicep. So the bicep is fighting, trying to hold the arm in when the hand is trying to get outside the elbow. So there's additional stress in that area. So it's really critical that we keep the hand inside the elbow. In addition to that, we have to be able to release the ball further out front. And what happens there is, as we move forward in our torso over our front leg, we get a better alignment between our upper arm and our forearm. And it's the olecranon process and olecranon fossa. And the more extended we get when we go into elbow extension, the better alignment and pronation we'll get between those two structures in the elbow. If we start getting forearm flyout, hand outside of elbow, coming through the acceleration phase into release, what we're going to end up is with a bang between those two structures in the upper arm and lower arm, olecranon process, olecranon fossa.
Olecranon.
I'm sorry?
Olecranon.
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 Olecranon, not olecranon.
Right.
Yes, my anatomical diction is wrong.
That's
so
right.
I can't okay, but the important thing is that when we're forearm flyout, we're going to have early release, and then we're going to have a banging of those two components in the elbow structure. Chris, Dr. McKenzie could speak at length, you know, to what goes on there. So we need to get that hand inside that elbow during and through the acceleration phase into release, whereby we'll get out in front, you know, of our post leg or our front leg. And then, like Chris says, pronation, which happens naturally But I see a lot of kids who will actually release the ball, pronate, and then come back out of pronation, and then go into what Chris described and demonstrated as slapping. So when you do pronate, you want to learn how to hold that pronation, and then maintain an angle in the elbow, and then I think the final stage of the deceleration process would be the whole entire upper body, torso, rotating around the front hip. And in all of that, we'll get adequate deceleration of all of that energy that we brought into ball release, that we can actually end the process with a nice, relaxed elbow and arm. So there's no stress on the shoulder, no stress on the elbow, and much better health and recovery times, after throwing.
Okay. So that's the proper way to decelerate, and we know that because you can see it. The loss of internal rotation at the shoulder stems from so much muscular eccentric or decelerating forces on the back of the shoulder,
right,
which reduce internal rotation. When your arm's out wide like this when you throw, right, there's so much eccentric strain at the bicep that occurs here, more so here than if your arm's in here like this. But just still, that act of throwing and pronating like this when your arm comes through, there's a traction force on your arm, and the bicep is one of the things that helps to limit that as the elbow is snapping into extension. So the bicep has to eccentrically or decelerate the movement of the forearm, right? And so what you'll see is a loss of extension at your elbow over time, over the course of a game, over the course of a season. So it's important to keep those two structures flexible.
I can actually show that. I have loss at mine. Just real quick. So we got my left arm.
Straight.
You can see. Right arm.
Not straight. Yep. So
Deceleration is it is so profoundly important, and 90 to 95% of all of the kids I see, and Chris would have an idea of this as well. Of all the pitchers I see, do not decelerate efficiently. Everyone throws the ball, and like I say, it's time to go get lunch because I'm done. My work is over. I've done my job. Your job's only half done when the ball leaves your fingertips. Now your job is to save your arm, and we cannot overemphasize that. It's a lot of work, and it's kind of tedious, and you have to train for it. But the way that I inspire and encourage guys to train for deceleration is there is a lot of acceleration to be gained in becoming a world-class decelerator. And what I mean by that, the better the arm decelerates, the better the body decelerates the arm, the faster the body will allow the arm to accelerate.
exactly.
Because the body is innately intelligent. Knowing that it is inefficient at deceleration, it will, to some degree, to a measure, limit the body's ability to accelerate. So if we become more efficient decelerators, it will free the body, and this is all at a very deep neuromuscular subconscious level. It will free the body to be able to accelerate the arm better, into acceleration and release, knowing that it has the capacity and the tools to be able to decelerate the arm safely and keep the arm healthy.
It's a good point. Yeah, the body can slow if the body knows it has the brakes. It'll allow you to move even faster. So
yeah, yep. And I always use the analogy of a car. So we have a car that's capable of doing 100 miles an hour, and it has no brakes on it. So how fast are you comfortable going in that car? And I get anywhere from like 0 to 10 miles per hour. So then I put brakes on the car. Now the brakes are capable of stopping the car at 50 miles per hour. Car is still capable of doing 100. So how fast would you feel safe going in the car? And obviously the answer would be maybe 45, and the Daredevils are 55, 50 mile per hour. Okay? And then the way we end it is, now I have a car that's capable of doing 100, and I have brakes that will stop the car at 125. How fast will you go? And everybody's doing 100. Pedal to the metal, max effort, all out. Because they know that they can just stab the brake and they're putting people through the windshield. And that's a real nice, comfortable feeling. So when we know that we can decelerate, it just provides us with a measure of comfort that doesn't otherwise exist. But awareness of the whole entire process is first and foremost. And we have a serious lack of awareness due to a lack of understanding and education in the baseball community at large.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I think we should wrap it up because I heard the word lunch just a few minutes ago, and I'm about ready to eat. The key is on my computer because I'm so hungry.
They do look good.
So I'm looking at the H right now. The H key. So
That's for hungry.
H for hungry, right? Are there any closing statements that either of you would like to make, or shall we just wrap it up?
Yeah,
I'm good.
I would say one thing, hey guys, learn about your arms. Become students of movement, understand how to move efficiently, and engage in the process. You will love the result. I'm out.
That's good with you?
Just like Jimmy said, educate yourself.
Educate yourself, right. All right, well, you can find us on the web at ckperformance.net, and we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're everywhere, so you can find us. All right, guys, we'll see you.